Hello and welcome to the show that teaches you the things your parents and teachers are too afraid to. The Helios blog. Today, Jordan and Mikhaila Peterson expose Andrew Tate. Let's get into it.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
You'll get better at solving problems
Yeah,
very rapidly.
yeah.
So it doesn't really matter where
Less
you start.
scared of doing it.
Yeah. And that starts to scale really quickly.
This episode was sponsored by Schwank Grills.
Nope. Sorry.
Time. Can we talk about two things?
Sure.
Okay. One, I've been getting fairly tortured on Twitter about this Andrew Tate thing.
Big surprise.
Are you okay with addressing that?
Sure.
Okay. So I think first, before we get started, and I only want to talk about this once because I'm very bored of this.
When she talks about it, look at her expression. Look at how bored she is. You see? Look at how bored she is. Can you see how terrible, what a terrible impact this has had on her life, and how this attention is totally not loved by her. It's hated.
Delve into this too much, but I think a bit of clarification on my end. In 2019, I was in Germany, and Andrew Tate bought me tickets to fly to Romania to go discuss business and then to fly back to Canada.
Stop the cap.
And the reason I went was because in 2019, when you Googled Andrew Tate, he came up as a millionaire kickboxer. He had ideas about a subscription platform for me and for you. And I think part of the way...
He was an attractive guy that asked to fly her out, to fly her out, and it was an offer she couldn't refuse. So stop lying about this stuff. Like, she's totally lying.
Because of how I grew up, I basically said yes to opportunities, and I didn't see a reason to not go talk to a millionaire about how he made money. And I also got the benefit of a ticket home. And I was also already in Germany. So I didn't see a reason not to go. That's also probably partly because I used to say yes to any opportunity, which I also think is part of the reason why I'm successful now. So anyway, I went there. From my experience.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about this crap. Notice how much she had to rationalize to her father. Like, it's a joke, guys. Like, what is this garbage? Like, do you really think that we're so stupid as to believe this crap? That's my question for you.
I met Andrew and I met his brother Tristan. They were very nice to me. Like, they were nice to me. We had a fun time. The reason that there's a rumor online.
Wait, what? We had a fun time? Trickle truth? Okay, understood. Yep, understood.
We hooked up or we slept together or something. That didn't happen.
Stop the
I've
cap.
told people that numerous times. It's not like I was a
People
20-year-old
like
girl,
to
like,
cast those
enamored.
aspersions.
Yeah. Just because you say it didn't happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. Like, oh man. The medium is the message. The medium. Watch what they do, not what they say. What did she do, and what did she say she did? The medium is the message.
Online too. It's one of the things I've really seen that troll demons like to go after women on.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we are. If we if we call it like we see it, we're troll demons. Yeah, terrible human beings. What's it called? Psychopaths online. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's really
So,
vicious,
like,
nasty, backbiting behavior.
And it doesn't matter what I say. He's dispelled it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I haven't really commented on the situation because when I went, they were nice to me. Like, I actually had a pretty good time. He drove me around in his Bugatti and we saw castles, which was a weird experience. I remember telling him, he was a very, very, very smart person. And I remember telling him, you kind of remind me of a human shark. I don't know, like, what it...
Yup, big surprise. Yeah, that's because he's a manipulator. He's an exploiter of people. And, by the way, you went with this... you went with this so-called human shark. And, again, that's a sign of respect. Like, guys, I'm telling you. Like, if she didn't sleep with him, I'm the Queen of England.
Was, but I was like, you're interesting. I don't know if it's your eyes or something, but you kind of remind me of a human shark.
Oh, look, compliments.
That was it. And then I flew home. So
Stop the
that's
cap.
the story on my end.
Cap.
Now, I wanted to
Liar.
address that because people have been bothering me on Twitter
Yup,
for like 2
liar.
years or 3 years.
Liar,
because of
liar.
Pictures of us
Liar.
smoking cigars or having a vodka or something because I did. And it was fun. But that's it. That's the story on my end.
Do you think you
Liar.
made mistakes in that venture?
Look at Jordan's expression. He's like, she totally slept with that guy. And she's like, talking about it more isn't gonna convince people that she didn't do it. Look at Jordan's face. He's like, now I gotta therapize my own daughter. You know? That's what he's thinking. Damn. You know, she actually did do this.
Well, I had no idea he was going to become like the most famous person in the entire world. Would that have changed it?
You still slept with him, and wonderful. Congratulations. Great job.
I don't think so. Like, from knowing what I knew at the time, I would have still gone.
Right. You would have still slept with
Knowing
him,
more
right?
about
Understood.
the webcam stuff. And he told me about, so once I was there, he told me about the webcam stuff.
What did he tell you?
Not in detail. Okay, I can't remember
Okay.
that well, but it was something like...
Stop the cap. Of course you can remember. You're a smart girl. It's obvious to everyone. You can remember. You just don't want to talk to your dad about it. Understood. But if you lie about this, what else would you lie about? I mean, we already know what you'd lie about.
Women who want to do webcam stuff.
Cap.
Want to do it.
Yup, liar.
I help them make way more money.
Liar.
And I take a percentage. And so I was like, okay. I don't think, I wasn't like, that seems like a wonderful business model. But I was like, if there are women who are already doing it and now they're making more money, I guess it doesn't seem, it is what it is, kind of.
Yeah, you're kind of digging yourself into a bigger hole by saying this. Because you're saying you kind of agree with what he does. Again, you know what happens when girls sleep with a guy? They fall into his frame. Need I say more? Yeah, anyway. Okay, let's continue.
But I didn't know that until I got there, and then he wanted to set up subscription platforms and said they could be very valuable. And we'd already been kind of looking into that because you'd had some issues with social media. I was worried you were going to get banned on sites, and so I was already thinking it would be good to set that up with a subscription platform.
Gmail canceled me at one point.
Yeah, I know.
About that time.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So it was like, it would be good
Hilarious.
to learn how to do the subscription platform. Anyway, so I kind of went there to like scope things out. And it was a very interesting experience, and they were nice to me.
You're a liar. Yeah, you went there, you picked their brain, you slept with Andrew, like, whatever, it's fine. Don't be embarrassed. Look at how hard she's trying to, like, cover herself and rationalize it and block it, and, man. Like, methinks, what is it, Shakespeare? Methinks the lady doth protest too much?
That's like the story.
Yeah, well,
that's your story.
I hesitate to talk about Andrew Tate because I don't know that much about him, But I'll tell you what I know and what I think, and people can take it for what it's worth. I mean, the first question is, why is he so popular? And the answer is, well, if you have to choose between being depressed and anxious and laying downstairs and covering yourself with Cheeto dust and looking at pornography and being timid and never going out, or, you know, listening to someone like Andrew Tate who says, like, get the hell out there and take the world, like, that's better. That's the shadow, right, speaking in some ways, right? Like, if you're naive and timid and anxious and intimidated and useless and resentful, there's going to be a bit of a monster that needs to call to you to say, you know, gird up your loins and get the hell out there in the world.
Right.
And so it's better to be a monster than a rabbit in some ways, right? Or at least there's some utility in the more monstrous predatory path that isn't there in the pathetic rabbit path. And that's partly because if you are a pathetic rabbit, you're going to become a predator anyways. You're just going to become a dark, backdoor, backbiting, gossip mongering, resentful.
Right, exactly. Exactly. If you're a weakling, then you're not a direct predator, you're an indirect predator. You're a predator either way, because human beings are predators, right? They're definitely not prey. Or, you know, if you are prey, then you get preyed on, right?
Resentful monster.
Society's also pushing that on men in
yes,
particular,
constantly.
like, be
well, and
weak.
I knew, and I warned people repeatedly that if the culture kept emasculating men,
Right.
that men who said, to hell with that, I'd rather be a monster, would become extremely popular.
Right,
Now,
exactly.
Andrew Tate is emblematic of that in many ways, because the first thing you got to say about him is that he's genuinely tough.
Indeed.
Right? So that's not a front. That's not a front. He's a
Can you please, when he says this, pan to Michaela?
fighter. And you can't take the courageous element of being a fighter away from someone who will actually step in the ring. Right? And so now, and then you said Tate's intelligent, and what that means as well is that some of the things he says are going to be of value. Now, why he says those, that's a whole different issue.
Well, that's exactly the
thing
point.
that-
His thing is, he's an exploitative person, right? He aims to take advantage, right? But he even will admit that to your face, that he's taking advantage. And it's really funny that Michaela would say, you remind me of a human shark, because that is what he is. He's a guy that takes advantage, right?
Disturbs me is that, like, I'm not very fond of the whole online porn thing in any way. And I don't think that it's okay for young women to monetize their sexual attractiveness
I agree.
online. I think that leads to a very dark place for them, even
Indeed.
if they're successful. Because
Right.
becoming
Hurts your-
successful
hurts your soul.
you don't become successful by exploiting yourself. And
No.
you might think, well, I can exploit myself. It's like, you can't treat yourself like a psychopath would treat you and get away.
Right, exactly. So it's funny because Michaela herself did that very thing, right, by going and being with Andrew. But again, that's neither here nor there, right?
Away with it, even if the psychopath that's doing that is yourself. That doesn't work. That's why psychopaths aren't very successful, because they exploit themselves just like other people. And so I don't like the whole online porn thing. And then I don't now, my understanding, and I've watched him apparently agree to this characterization online. You know, it's hard to get I'm not trying to be the jury here because I haven't heard the whole damn story, but from what I've watched is he would enter into relationships with women and tilt them in the direction of generating like an OnlyFans following and monetize that and then take a percentage. And there isn't anything about that that I think is acceptable.
Nope. That's very psychopathic. Of course. Obviously. Right? That's, you know, like, that's without a doubt.
You know, and you could say, well, you know, women are the captains of their own soul, and if they want to monetize their own attractiveness, then what the hell, why not do it? And if they're going to do it anyways, you know, I can help them, and if I help them, why not take a piece of the action? And the answer is, to me, the answer to that is, well, how about because it's ignoble and wrong? Now, you could counter, and you could say, well, you're just too useless and timid to dare to do that.
Right, exactly. Jordan has used the same argument before, right? And I mean, here's the thing, right? Andrew himself, he is the kind of person, right, that he would say something like that. Someone would take advantage of these girls. Why not me? Right? But that isn't to say you're forwarding, you're advancing, civilization by doing such a thing. In fact, it might even be regressing.
Right? And I'd say, point taken. Nietzsche had pointed this out back in the 1850s. He said most morality is cowardice in the guise of morality. It's not like I'm good. It's just that I'm afraid to do that. And Tate would say, well, if you're just not doing something because you're a coward, that doesn't mean you're good. And whereas I'm forthright and tough, and look at me, I climb into the ring, and I can entice women into sex work online and take a cut, and why the hell shouldn't I? And I think that if you're a timid and reprehensible, resentful, bottom-dwelling male, that's going to look like an attractive alternative. But
okay, that was a character attack, right? But before that, it wasn't. But yeah, Jordan gave his personal opinion there. And it's funny that he didn't... it's funny to me, anyway, that Jordan didn't crap talk Michaela for going and spending time with Andrew. Maybe he did, just not on camera, right? But it's shameful, frankly.
But it's not the highest form of human behavior, right? It's not acceptable. Like, I think pimps of any sort I truly believe they're amongst the most contemptible of people. I think there's nothing in, with a pimp is, I've got all these hoes and look at me, like, king of these women. And it's like, no, you are the ultimate in pathetic, parasitic predators. There's nothing about that that's heroic. It's just pathetic. Now, you might say, if you're that type, well, at least I'm not as contemptible as the cowards who hide behind me. It's like, fair enough.
Sure.
There's ranks of...
Sure. But, who's the greater fool? The fool or the fool who follows him? I believe that's from Lord of the Rings.
Order, even in hell. And there's lower and higher demons, and the person who would like to do something terrible but is too cowardly to do it, that's a pretty damn low form of demon. But that doesn't mean that the person who would like to do something and is courageous enough to do it, even though it's bad, isn't also a demon. And so, I think fundamentally that Tate serves his immediate self in this like impulsive, gratifying manner. And I think that goes along with his
psychopath.
Look at me, I'm in a Bugatti. It's like, fair enough, man.
Who cares? Honestly, these sort of things don't matter. But, to someone like Andrew, they do.
In some way.
Do you think what he's been telling men more on the, take responsibility for your life and do things,
mm-hmm.
if that, it's hard to, I suppose, separate it from everything else.
In actual life, people are complex. No villain is simple. No villain is simple, and in great literature, the great villain is a sympathetic figure. You're kind of on board for 75% of it. And not only that, you might also say, well, if I was in that position, I might do the same thing. Like, it's only a cartoon villain who's 100% evil, right? And so even when you meet someone who's dark and psychopathic to the core, you'll find, and I've had clients who were like, I had one client who had like 5 restraining orders out against him. He was actually quite comical. He's quite a young guy, small guy, kind of slight, extremely intense. He had that kind of human shark thing going. And he was quite the horrible riotous blast to work with, because he was a very interesting monster. And 5 restraining orders is a lot.
Yep.
And restraining orders don't work on the sort of people who need restraining orders. So don't be ever thinking a restraining order is going to help you. Not if a real monster's got you in his sights. And he had a paranoid end to him. And what that meant was, if he was ever insulted by you, he would blow the insult up.
Right, he's trying to have a fight, effectively. His ego is hurt, so he tries to have a fight.
and it would put enmity between the two of you. So like talking to him was quite the nightmare because you didn't get to make a mistake, and he was hypervigilant because he was paranoid, so he's just watching you like a bloody hawk for every deviation from honesty. And like, I never lied to him, and if
You gotta be like a lawyer with him, right?
I thought he was doing something stupid and terrible, I just told him that looks to me like that's pretty stupid and terrible. Like there was no, I wasn't playing with him and I wasn't trying to impress him. And I talked to him for a long time, but he would I remember he told me one time about going into a bank, you know, and he met one of those tellers that, you know, you go into an institution sometime, you meet somebody with bureaucratic personality disorder, and they decide that the good thing to do that day is to just screw up your life with some idiot complication just because they can.
It's my job.
Right, yeah, well, you know, I have to do this, and they're playing their little power game because they're like Dostoevsky's underground man, and they're resentful to the core, and so they're going to just screw around with you. Well, now and then someone would do that with him. And he'd say, I'm going to be your worst nightmare. And then what he meant was, I'm now going to commit a sizable proportion of my life and all my intellectual prowess to making you as miserable as I can possibly imagine. And then he would go do that. You know.
Yeah, very scary, obviously, if that would have happened to you. All right, let's continue.
Family, you know, practically speaking, because one of the things we did learn was that just because the attack looked like a catastrophe doesn't mean that it isn't the best thing that could have possibly happened, even though you might not see that for like 2 years.
Painful
Right.
2 years, yeah.
Right, and then of course it depends on how you dance with it too, you know. I mean, when I was, one of the most shocking things that happened to me when I was still ill was to be portrayed in the Marvel series as Red Skull, right? I mean, it just knocked me off my feet. I couldn't believe it. It was so insanely surreal and over the top. And we didn't know what the hell to do about that.
Hilarious. Also hilarious.
Well,
I thought you might have taken a little bit of time to get there.
Well, by that
you were
time
sick
it had happened.
too.
Yeah, and I was sick too.
Yeah.
By that time it had happened enough so that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But it did. It really, literally, when I first saw it, I almost fell over. It shook me so badly because I just couldn't believe it was happening. But then we turned it into a joke, really, and put we made that lobster symbol. Some Czech kid, it was
lobster.
a Czech kid, right, made that lobster out of the Hydra image.
Yeah.
We made that tell the truth and make your bed like evil logo, and then ran a charity venture for, well.
Very stupid, obviously. Like, there's no way that Jordan is Red Skull. Like, he's not that. That's actually nuts. Like, how woke would you have to be, right, to put him as that? You'd have to be a true idiot, right? A blind idiot.
For about a year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that worked, you know, and that's a weird thing because that worked out real well. And that was an really interesting example because it was as profound a reputational blow in some ways as could be mustered, right? It's
right.
Like, to be pilloried as a Nazi is one thing, but like to be pilloried as the magical source of all Nazis, that's a whole different level of conceptualization. And you think, well, you know, how could that be turned to something good? And that's a complicated question, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be. So
did you know Elvis's manager had all the I Hate Elvis merch? That's what you do.
Yeah.
That's how you do
that was something I joked about early. You know, the first time I went on Joe Rogan, I made this, you know, horrible joke that I'd figured out how to monetize social justice warriors, and you know, all the people who think that I'm an evil capitalist which I am, thought, well, there's just evidence that he's an evil capitalist. But it was also a joke. But it was also true. It's like, okay, like you guys, you hate capitalism.
Right. So if you sell something that says that Jordan is an evil capitalist, then ironically, he'll become an evil capitalist off of. Like, it's ridiculous.
And so you're going to use your woke nonsense to go after people's reputation. It's like, what's the funniest thing that can be done with that? And clearly the funniest thing to do with that is to monetize it. And so we've done that a lot. So the last time I was in Berlin, we accidentally rented a theater that was right in the middle of the communist district. And all the communists thought that was just a provocation, but it wasn't. It was just ignorance. And we didn't know that that was like communist central in,
I didn't
Berlin.
even know they had that area in Berlin.
Right. You know, so silly us, but they did. And so we got a couple of hundred protesters, which was the best the protesters had mustered on our last tour. Because usually it was like 6 bedraggled individuals, you know, with their signs protesting something they didn't even purport to understand.
Right, exactly.
You know, after a big show in the press about how there would be thousands of them.
Yeah.
And so, but Berlin, they managed a pretty decent contingent. But the police there are pretty used to handling them, and it's like a little dance. They all know how to do it. So we went out and filmed them, and then used them
Hilarious.
for the rest of the tour. Because it's like, what else are you going to do about it? You know, you might as well do something comical and hypothetically productive and satirical at the same time. And so
I want credit for that.
yeah, I think that was your, I think I don't remember how much of the Red Skull charity venture was also, that was a collaborative venture between the two of us. Did you find the Czech kid?
Yeah, on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
he was great.
Yeah. Well, you know, we always had a relationship, well, and this was true in our household in general, like there was always like satire and play.
We
right?
had to.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that too. But it wasn't just, you know, the friends that I had, and you know this, the friends that I had when I was a kid, you've met a lot of them. Oh.
Okay, all right. I think we've exhausted this particular pathway. Let's end the video here. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all for notifications, drop me a donation. Like Hunter M, Adrian, Tom, and Bobby, and Dylan, shout outs to you. Most recent purchase of Strategist Guide to Seduction and Cruise to Live By. Thank you. You can buy my books at bit.ly/heliosbooks. You can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/theheliosblog. If you want coaching, message me at theheliosblog@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.